She didn't see me yet. She was too busy playing someone else's wife for the night. Her back was straight, her hand rested on the table like it belonged there, fingers curved in subtle familiarity toward the man sitting across from her. I was 3 tables away, half shadowed by a corner light. Alone. Coat draped over the back of my chair, a sealed envelope tucked into the inner pocket like a quiet weapon. She thought she had the night to herself. I used to trust. Girls' night. That phrase had always sounded harmless, necessary even. I never made her ask for it, just smiled when she threw on a black dress and spritzed perfume on her collarbones. I used to like how free she looked walking out the door. That started dying 6 weeks ago. It was subtle at first, just a single charge on our credit card statement that didn't match the story she told. I was cleaning up the digital trail for taxes when I saw it. Trattoria Fiora, downtown, Thursday night, $164. She'd said they had margaritas at Maddie's house, a sweatpants and tequila type night. Fiora didn't serve tequila. They served imported wine and duck ragu. I stared at that line for a full minute, clicked on it, matched the timestamp. Her story had been too specific. She even mentioned someone spilling salt on the floor. I remembered thinking how odd it was that she brought up something so mundane. I didn't accuse her. I didn't storm out or make a scene. Instead, I highlighted the line and printed it, folded it, slipped it into a plain envelope and put it in my desk drawer. From that moment on, I started watching. The next Thursday, she was out again. Same excuse. I stayed up, eyes on the window, pretending to work while I listened for the garage. She came home smelling faintly like rosemary and warm bread, not tequila. I could have brushed it off, but something inside me had already changed. I wasn't suspicious. I was activated. The morning after, while she was in the shower, I checked the laundry basket. Her scarf was in there. Expensive silk. And it didn't smell like our detergent. It smelled like expensive cologne, woodsy foreign. Not mine. I made a note. A week later, I casually asked her what book they were reading. She blinked too long. Said, "The one about the missing girl." No title. Just that. I asked, "Gone Girl?" She nodded too fast, smiled too wide. I didn't ask again. For the next few weeks, I played the part. I kissed her goodbye, asked how her day was, even cooked dinner once or twice. But I started keeping a folder. Not digital, paper. Receipts, route printouts from Google Maps history, timestamps. If she said she was at the grocery store at 6:30, I checked the store's location timeline and our shared account activity. She wasn't buying groceries. She was parked near the riverfront, where Fiora was. Still, I waited. Not because I wasn't sure, but because I knew once I acted, there'd be no return. I needed to be certain, not just of her guilt, but of my position. I began quietly separating our accounts, moving my paycheck to a new checking line in my name. I stopped using the shared card. I changed the password to my cloud storage. I didn't hate her yet. I wanted to. But most nights, I still lay beside her and felt that ghost of what we used to be, brushing against my ribs like a bruise that hadn't quite formed. It made me sick, how much I still hoped I was wrong. And then came tonight. She told me this was a special, girls' night, someone's birthday, fancy dinner, she'd be home late. I kissed her cheek, helped her zip the back of her dress, told her she looked beautiful. Then I drove 15 minutes ahead of her, reserved a corner table at Fiora, asked for a view of the central floor, paid in cash. I watched her walk in 10 minutes later, alone for 2 seconds before he stood to greet her. Tall, well-dressed, confident, he kissed her cheek with practiced ease. They sat, they laughed, and I waited, drinking my espresso in slow, surgical sips, until the waiter brought their dessert menus. Then I raised my hand. "Could you deliver this to the lady at that table?" I asked, sliding the sealed envelope across the table. "Just before they order dessert." He looked at it, nodded. She still hadn't seen me, but she would, and she would never forget the taste of what came next. I didn't follow the waiter with my eyes. I just sat there, watching their table like I was watching a stage play I'd seen too many times. Same actors, same lines, same farce. She took the envelope with a curious smile, eyes darting toward the kitchen like she assumed it was a birthday stunt. Her companion leaned in, probably asking what it was. I could almost hear her laugh, light and uncertain. Her fingers broke the seal. She read the first line, and then she stopped laughing. I watched her face go pale. Not dramatic, not a movie scene. Just a slow draining of color like something inside her chest had quietly ruptured. She turned the paper toward him. His posture changed immediately. He pushed his chair back. No words were exchanged loud enough for me to hear, but his hand moved away from hers like it had touched something scalding. He stood, jacket on. Didn't look at her again. She didn't move. The envelope contained 3 things: a formal letter from my attorney initiating separation on grounds of marital misconduct, a preliminary asset freeze request, already filed that morning, and a postscript in my handwriting. I've known since Fiora. I let you have dessert. Now it's my turn. I didn't wait to see if she cried. I stood, buttoned my coat, walked out with the quiet dignity of a man who just cleared the last lie off his plate. But leaving that restaurant wasn't the end. It was the spark. Because betrayal isn't just one act. It's a structure. And this one had hidden foundations I hadn't seen yet. The next morning, I woke up early, packed a weekend bag, drove to a quiet rental property my uncle had kept empty for years. I needed space. The kind you can breathe inside. Not the kind filled with her perfume, with ghost handprints on the mirrors, with smiles I now knew were misdirected. I didn't answer her calls, but I didn't block her either. I wanted a record. She texted first, then called, left voicemails, all in the same tone, panicked confusion. What was that? Where are you? Please talk to me. She never said sorry, just asked to talk. That told me more than anything. I responded once, 4 words. The lawyer will explain. What followed was a slow unraveling of the web she'd spun. I started auditing everything, not with tech or hired help, but with old-fashioned logic. I combed through the last 6 months of statements, matched dates against her stories, looked for inconsistencies in mileage logs on our shared car. That's when the pattern emerged. The same Thursday nights, same locations, same time windows. He wasn't a one-off, he was a routine. But what cut deeper wasn't the dinners, it was the lies designed to protect them. I remembered asking her if she wanted me to drop her off at Maddie's once. She said no, said they were carpooling from the other side of town. I remembered thinking it was a little odd at the time. Now I realized, there was no Maddie that night. I looked up the so-called book club's event posts on social media. Found none. Checked if she had any photos tagged. 0. But someone else had posted that night, from a restaurant patio. And in the background, half obscured but unmistakable, was her. Not reading. Not with girlfriends. Laughing with him. Still, I didn't go public. No angry emails. No revenge posts. Just printed the photo and slid it into my growing folder. What's worse than betrayal is the moment you realize someone rewrote the history of your life behind your back, and you clapped for it. I started replaying scenes in my head. A laugh she gave too freely. A text she hid quickly when I entered the room. The networking event she claimed she needed to dress up for, when she returned late, smelling like citrus and wine. I hadn't been suspicious. I'd been asleep. But I was awake now. And if she thought the letter at Fiora was the end of my hand, she hadn't yet seen the real play. I knew it would happen eventually. She would show up at the house. And she did, 4 days after Fiora. Hair still perfect, dressed in the same navy wool coat I'd bought her 2 Christmases ago. She used her old key and walked into the kitchen like it hadn't all changed. I let her. I was sitting at the dining table, working through spreadsheets and asset portfolios, quietly reviewing what she hadn't realized I already knew. She stood there, eyes scanning the room. Her mouth opened like she was ready to deliver a monologue, but I didn't give her the stage. I said, "There's coffee if you want it. But I'm not here for a conversation." Her eyes narrowed. She crossed her arms. Then came the first attack, not rage, not sadness, but confusion laced with faux offense. "Why would you ambush me like that? You embarrass me." I didn't respond immediately, just looked at her like a stranger. Like I was studying a language I no longer wanted to learn. She stepped forward. "It's not what you think." But it was, and more. I slid the folder across the table. The one with receipts, maps, dates. I watched her face morph. Confusion, denial, realization. Her hand hovered over the folder like it might burn her. Then she pulled it open. She turned page after page, slower with each one, like the truth was gaining mass. I didn't speak. I let the silence do what my words wouldn't, show her just how much I already knew. When she finally looked up, her voice was low, accusatory. "So you've been spying on me?" I didn't blink, didn't raise my voice. "No," I said. I've been documenting your lies. Silence stretched. She tried again. We were just talking. I needed someone to. I cut her off. Don't insult both of us. Then I told her what I'd already done. The lawyer. The filing. The asset freezes. Her expression cracked at that. She dropped into the chair across from me. Her hands trembled now, and for a second, I saw the real emotion beneath the show, the fear of losing the life she had. I didn't enjoy it, but I didn't soften either. I'm not here to scream, I said. I'm here to close the book. That night, after she left, I pulled up our shared digital storage and downloaded every important file to an encrypted drive. I wasn't about to let her run interference. There was a coldness in me now, not rage, but strategy. The version of me who once surprised her with weekend getaways was gone. This version played chess. 2 days later, my lawyer called. Said her attorney had made contact, trying to negotiate quietly. They'd clearly told her she was in a corner, financial exposure, documented infidelity, and I had control of the timeline. I could have let her stew, but I moved fast. We filed the divorce officially. I requested temporary possession of the house, financial separation pending full audit, and asked that she vacate by the end of the week. I still remember the silence on the other end of the line when her lawyer read that clause. She hadn't believed I'd really do it. But betrayal turns something off in you. Whatever light used to keep me hoping she'd come home and say, I made a mistake, had gone dark. Now I was securing the exits. What I didn't expect, what I never saw coming, was the knock at my door the next day. Not hers, the friend. The one who always vouched for her whereabouts. Who played the innocent confidant. She looked nervous, and the first words out of her mouth were, I need to tell you something. Before it gets worse. That's when I realized the affair was the surface. The real damage was hiding under the ice. The moment I opened the door, I saw it in her face, shame. Not guilt, not regret, but that pale, distant look of someone who knew the weight of what they protected and now had no more cover left. She didn't wait for an invitation. She stepped into my entryway like she'd done 100 times before. Only this time, she clutched her purse like a shield. I didn't know how far it went, she said. I didn't respond. Just led her to the kitchen and waited for her to explain. I thought it was just a fling, she said, voice low. I didn't know she was planning things. That word stuck with me. Planning. I stayed quiet, letting her fill the silence. She told me it wasn't serious. She continued fidgeting with her sleeve. That he was just a distraction. I didn't know she was using my name to cover nights out. I swear. You vouched for her, I said, calm but flat. Twice. She nodded. Couldn't meet my eyes. She made me lie to you. She whispered. Said if I didn't help, she'd tell people I was. Her voice caught. She had stuff on me. Personal stuff. I panicked. I stared at her. All I could think was how familiar her voice had been in those lies. How natural. How easily I'd believed both of them. Then she handed me something. A folder. Another one. Lighter, smaller, but loaded with weight. These are the screenshots, she said. Messages she sent me. Photos. Things she told me to say to you. I opened it. Read one line. Then another. It was worse than I expected. The messages were detailed instructions. If he asks, say we were together till 10. Send him the selfie if he needs proof. Tell him you spilled wine on my shoes. That's why I had to change. She wasn't covering up a mistake. She was engineering a double life, and she used her friend as camouflage. The final page in the folder was a bank transfer, a small amount, but unmistakable. A direct deposit from our joint account to her friends. I didn't want it, the friend said, voice trembling. She said it was just to keep things smooth. I didn't realize you'd go this far. I stared at the paper. 1,000 thoughts moved through me, but one was louder than the rest. She didn't just cheat on me. She funded her betrayal with my money, and paid others to keep the illusion intact. It was deliberate, calculated, and far more coordinated than I'd imagined. The friend left not long after. Said she was willing to give a statement if needed. Said she was sorry. I didn't say, thank you. I couldn't. That night I sat on the floor of the guest room in my uncle's rental house, surrounded by evidence, folders, printouts. The kind of proof that strips away whatever hope you were still pretending to hold. I looked at the marriage license tucked in a box in the closet. Pulled it out. Read it slowly. It was dated 7 years ago. And suddenly I realized, I hadn't just lost my wife, I'd lost 7 years of believing someone loved me honestly. But I wasn't mourning anymore. I was preparing. Because she wasn't done trying to win. And I wasn't done making sure she lost. The night after her friend came clean, I drove to the bank. It wasn't spontaneous. I had reviewed every transaction, every note in the margins, every innocent line item that suddenly felt like something far worse. I wanted to see the paper trail with my own eyes, not a screen. I wanted a person, someone in a tie, behind glass, to confirm what I already knew. The banker pulled up our account activity. She scrolled. I watched her face shift ever so slightly when I asked about 3 specific transfers, identical in amount, just under the flagging limit, each spaced out, each sent to accounts I didn't recognize. Those were authorized jointly, she said politely. 2 names. Your wife and yourself. Except I had never signed anything. Not for those transfers. Not for that amount. I kept my tone level. I'd like copies of the original authorization signatures, I said. All of them. She hesitated. That may take a few days. That's fine, I said, standing. I'm not in a rush. Just making sure I know what's mine. But I was in a rush. I just knew rushing wouldn't help. I needed to understand the scope of what she'd done before I made another move. Back at the rental, I called my attorney. Explained the new information. He went quiet, then said, She's trying to poison the well before it's even tested. She's moving assets and preparing counterclaims. You need to protect everything, now. He told me to lock down all remaining accounts, file a motion to demand a forensic audit, and then he asked a question I hadn't thought about yet. Do you think she's planning to say you were abusive? I didn't answer right away. But deep down, I already knew the answer. Because later that same night, I got a message from a mutual friend, someone I hadn't spoken to in weeks. Hey, just heard something weird. She's saying you were controlling, that you monitored her movements. Everything okay? My stomach turned. The story was shifting, fast. She wasn't just trying to escape the wreckage. She was repainting it to make herself the victim. She knew I'd uncovered her affair. She knew about the fake receipts, the corroborated lies, the friend's confession. So now she was changing tactics. If she couldn't deny it, she'd deflect it. The narrative was taking shape. I had isolated her. I had kept tabs. I was obsessed with control. She had taken my silence and filled it with her own story. It made me sick, because I remembered the real reason I stopped asking where she was on Thursday nights. It wasn't control. It was surrender. I'd stopped asking because I already knew the answers wouldn't be honest. I'd chosen to protect my dignity rather than beg for truth. But that kind of quiet doesn't make good headlines. I spent that night writing down every interaction I could remember from the last 6 months. Dates, times, conversations, anything that could serve as a counterweight. I even dug through our smart home logs, door entries, thermostat changes, garage openings. I documented it all. This wasn't about winning a public opinion contest. This was about protecting myself from a woman who decided to burn the house down with both of us inside. She texted again that night. You've made this cruel. You're humiliating me. I never wanted it to be this way. I didn't respond. I archived it, dated it, added it to the folder. I remembered how, just a month ago, she had cried at the movie we watched together, leaning her head against my shoulder, fingers locked with mine like we were still whole. How she had turned to me afterward and said, "Thank you for still making me feel like I'm home." And now? She was preparing to put my name on a list of abusers. That kind of betrayal doesn't shatter, it erodes. Quietly, deliberately. Until one day you realize you're standing on sand. But I wasn't sinking. I was building the foundation for a war she wasn't prepared to finish. And she hadn't even seen what I'd do next. The next time I saw her was in mediation. We sat on opposite ends of a glass-top table, flanked by our lawyers, papers neatly stacked, pens untouched. She looked calm, too calm. Polished, practiced, like she'd been coached to perform contrition but not feel it. I noticed how she wore the necklace I gave her on our 5th anniversary. A quiet prop, maybe? A silent appeal to shared history. It didn't work. My attorney began with the financial disclosures. We had filed a motion to freeze further account access, and he laid out the timeline of her withdrawals, carefully spaced, deceptively structured. When he slid the printed screenshots of her messages to her friend across the table, her attorney's face flickered. Hers didn't. She looked at me, eyes flat, and said, "Those were jokes. You're twisting everything. I didn't reply. My lawyer did. The financial evidence isn't a joke, nor is the affidavit we have from your friend. That landed. Her lips tightened. She turned to her attorney, whispered something I couldn't hear. He leaned in, nodded, whispered back. It was all very controlled. Then she dropped the bomb I'd been waiting for. She accused me of being emotionally manipulative. Not physically, not overtly, just enough to cast a shadow. She claimed I made her feel monitored. Said I used financial pressure to isolate her. That I weaponized kindness to keep her dependent. It was elegant, subtle, the kind of thing you couldn't disprove with facts alone. I didn't flinch. Because I came prepared. I'd brought a chronological record. Every instance where I deferred to her, supported her career choices, stayed home while she traveled, quietly took over chores when she said she needed me time. I'd even included screenshots from her own messages thanking me for being her rock. But the real counterpunch? The timeline of Thursday nights. I laid it out. Location pings, overlapping restaurant charges, photos she didn't know I had. And then I handed over the notarized letter from her friend, backing every point. The room went quiet. Her attorney leaned back, exhaled. She stayed silent, her face carefully composed, until my attorney laid the final card on the table. Given this evidence, he said evenly, we're seeking full control of joint liquid assets and reserving the right to file a claim for marital fraud if negotiations fail. That cracked her. Not with tears. With venom. You planned this. She snapped, eyes narrowed. You set me up. I didn't flinch. Just met her stare with the calm she hated most. No, I said. I watched you bury yourself. Then I moved the shovel. It was the first time I saw something real in her eyes. Not guilt. Not regret. Fear. And that's when I realized something important. She never thought I'd leave. She thought I'd simmer, maybe sleep in the guest room for a while, maybe sulk. But she believed I'd stay tethered. Quiet. Predictable. She didn't realize I had already left the moment she handed that man a laugh that used to belong to me. Now, the game was over. And she knew it. The mediator adjourned for the day. Terms were being redrawn. Her attorney needed time to process new evidence. As we left, she caught up with me near the elevators. No audience this time. Just us. She said, You were supposed to love me enough to forgive me. I looked at her for a long moment. I did, I said. And that's what ruined you. The elevator opened. I stepped inside. She stayed behind. That night, I didn't go back to the rental. I went home, my home. The court order granting me exclusive temporary possession had cleared. She was gone. Her closet was half empty, makeup gone from the bathroom, scent scrubbed from the pillows. It felt wrong. It also felt clean. I stood in the kitchen and poured a drink, not to numb anything, but to mark the moment. I had crossed the final bridge. No more doubt. No more wondering. Now came the reconstruction. But I still had one more surprise waiting. And she would never see it coming. 2 weeks after the mediation, my attorney called with a tone I hadn't heard from him before. Measured, cautious, almost impressed. We found something, he said. You're going to want to sit down. I was already sitting. In my office, at the house that now legally belonged to me, staring at the wall where her wedding photo used to hang. I hadn't filled the space yet, he continued. She'd opened a secondary account through a proxy. The funds, about $48,000, came from a shared assets sale 3 months ago. She had it routed through a third-party holding company. Nothing illegal, just carefully hidden. It took me a second to process it. Then I remembered the art sale. A piece we'd inherited from her grandmother. It had sold quietly, through a private collector she handled herself. She told me the funds had gone toward a debt payoff. Turns out, the debt was fiction. She's been planning for longer than you thought, he said. This wasn't reaction. It was architecture. That word again. Planning. My response was calm. Can we lock it down? We already did. We're filing an injunction. You'll get your share, maybe more, if the judge considers it intentional concealment. I thanked him, hung up. Then I stared at the wall for a long time, listening to the silence of a house no longer built on lies. That afternoon, I visited the storage unit I'd rented a month ago, quietly, without telling anyone. It held one box, just one. Inside, her last handwritten birthday card to me. A photo strip from a trip we took to Maine. The first note she left me on my windshield in college. And on top of it all, a note I'd written myself weeks ago, dated the night before I served the legal papers. It said, "When this is over, remember who you were before you needed proof. That man didn't second-guess himself. That man wasn't broken. He was just asleep. Don't go back to sleep." I folded the note back up. I didn't cry. The thing about betrayal isn't just what it takes, it's what it teaches. That love without caution is a loaded gun. That silence isn't always noble. And that the person who promises forever can become a stranger wearing your favorite memories like a disguise. But I didn't come out of this bitter. I came out clean. The divorce finalized 3 weeks later. I retained the house, half of all remaining assets, and full financial recovery from her hidden funds. She left town shortly after. No forwarding address. Word got around. Friends stopped asking questions they didn't want answered. Her narrative fell apart quietly, like a tent collapsing in the wind. I didn't correct anyone. I didn't need to. The truth has its own gravity. These days I live simpler. No shared passwords. No quiet doubts. I wake up without the weight of wondering. And when I pass Fiora downtown, I don't feel rage. I just remember that the man I was at that table, silent, watchful, certain, is the man I never want to lose again. She had dessert. But I have peace.